Okay, right. Shall we start? Yes. Okay. So we'll start and we'll get going. So again, question number 14 also is something that I will take some time to explain. It's a very interesting story. This also you get certain MCQs, they change around and they give you a lot of MCQs from this area. So let me share my screen once again. Okay. Give me a second. Okay, so let me teach you this area on PES and the shape of the supply curve. How does the supply equation look? What happens to the value of PES when the let's say when you move along the supply curve? Okay, so let me teach you that part. So what am I going to teach you now? I'm going to teach you price elasticity of supply, not the basics, not what is elastic in elastic, and the quantity supplied equation, and also the supply curve. Okay, so what type of a relationship does all of these kind of have? So let me, in one diagram, in one screen itself, let me draw all the three types of curves that we have. So if you take if you take certain supply curves, let's say these are the three supply curves. So if you take a elastic supply curve, how does it look like? It looks like something like this. This is a elastic supply curve. How does a inelastic supply? Okay, we'll take a unitary elastic. Unitary elastic goes right from the origin, right from the middle there. This is a unitary elastic supply curve. Then how does an inelastic supply curve look like? It looks like this. This is what you call a inelastic supply curve. Now, what you need to know is from these three diagrams alone, there's a lot of things that you can figure out, guys. Figure out like what? You can figure out how does the, just by looking at the diagram, you should be able to tell whether this is elastic or inelastic based on where it starts, guys. See, if the curve starts from somewhere around here, you should say it's an elastic curve. If the curve starts right from the origin, you call it a unitary elastic curve. If the curve starts from the quantity supplied axis, you can call that an inelastic curve. That is one thing that you need to know. The moment you see a supply curve, you should be able to figure out, is it unitary, elastic, or inelastic? Is that part okay? By looking at the curve, can you tell which type of elasticity is it? Okay, right. So then we look at how will the supply equation for these curves look like. Okay, so if you take the supply equation based on your A component is your intercept. Now guys, now what is the supply equation? QS equals A plus BP. Now what is this A component? It is the quantity supplied when the price is 0. So if you take an elastic supply curve, look at this. When the price is 0, the quantity supplied is a negative number. Now this is how the curve extends now guys to the negative side. Yeah, so when the price is 0, let's say QS is a minus 100. So how will your supply equation look like? Your supply equation will have a negative A component. So it's going to be like QS equals minus A plus BP. If I'm to give an example, you can say QS equals, let's say, minus, let me write that again, QS equals minus 100, right? Minus 100 plus 5P. So the moment you see, now, looking at the supply curve itself, you can say this is elastic. But let's say they have not given us a supply curve, they have given us the equation. So by looking at the equation, if your A component here, this positive A component, this A component is negative, you should be able to say that, look here, this is a elastic supply curve. Then look at the other side of this case, an inelastic supply curve. In an inelastic supply curve, when the price is 0, quantity supplied is a positive number, let's say 200 here. So how will your supply equation look like then? QS will equal to A plus BP. There will be a positive A component. So example, QS equals 200 plus let's say 5P. Is that clear? So if your A component is a positive, it's a inelastic supply curve. If your A component is a negative, minus 100, you need to figure out this is a elastic supply curve. Is that part okay? By looking at the curve or by looking at the equation without doing any calculation, you should be able to say whether this is elastic or inelastic. Is that okay or not? Fine. Just by looking at the curve, guys. Looking at the either the supply curve or by looking at the supply equation, you should be able to figure that out. And how will it look for a unitary elastic supply curve? In a unitary elastic supply curve, guys, the intercept is 0. So here it will be QS equals BP. There will not be any A component. So it will be QS equals, let's say, 5P for an example. But that's how it will look like for a unitary elastic supply curve. So now if I give you a small thing, if I say, okay, let's say QS equals minus 10 plus P. What type of elastic does this curve have? Is it unitary? Is it elastic? Is it inelastic? QS equals minus 10 plus P. No one asked me questions, so you should be able to answer. Minus 10 plus P. Is it unitary? Is it elastic? Is it inelastic? It is an elastic supply curve. So minus 10 means what? Minus 10 means when the price is 0, QS is a minus 10. It's starting from here, right? And then it's going like this. So this is a elastic curve. So remember, by looking at the curve, by looking at where the supply curve is starting, or even by looking at the equation, you should be able to figure out what is happening to, or what is the type of PES, highly tested in MCQs. So hoping that part is okay. Now let me level this up a little. For those who remember, can you all tell me, guys, at this point, okay, at this point that I am circling here, right, in the elastic diagram, what is the value of PES? At that point there, what's the value of PES? Is it 0? Is it infinity? Is it something else? What is it at this point? Remember, guys, at this point of the supply curve, your PES is infinity at this side. Can you tell me in the inelastic curve, at this point, how much is your PES? At this point, it is 0, right? PES is 0. So now remember, guys, now can you tell me, is there any number more than infinity? Can the PES increase more than infinity? It can't. No. So in this, remember, in an elastic supply curve, let's take different points, right? So you know what will the PES values be? PES elastic, it will be more than 1, but less than infinity. So for example, here PES can be minus 5. At this point, let's say minus 2.5. Here it can be minus, sorry, not minus, plus, sorry. Right? Here it can be a 5. Here it can be a 2.5. Here it can be, let's say, 1.5. It will be more than 1, but it will continue to decrease along the supply curve. So in an elastic curve, remember, as price increases, what happens? As price increases, PES goes down, right? Or when moving upwards along the price axis, or as the quantity supplied increases, you can say price increase or QS increase, whatever. Whenever it is increasing, your PES value goes down, because now I'm not going into calculations and showing you all how that happens. So now we'll not go into that detail. Easy way to remember is at this point, it's infinity, guys. So you can do this in your theory class, you all would have learned. At this point, calculate PES and see, guys. At this very point, okay, if I am to just show you how is it infinity. Let's say here the price is, let's say 10, QS is 0. So how do you find PES? Change in quantity supplied divided by change in price multiplied by price over QS, no? So let's take another point also. Here, let's say 20 and 100. Okay. Okay, let's say 20 and, sorry, not 20. Let's take 12 and 100. Okay. 12 and 100. So then change in quantity supplied is 100, 0 going to 100. Change in price is 2 multiplied by, I'm finding at this price. So at this price is 10, QS is 0. So when you solve this case, when you solve this equation, you will get infinity, because anything divided by 0 is a infinity. So I'm not going into numbers and all of that, guys. So but on your end, remember at this point PES is infinity, and whenever you go upwards along the supply curve, you can't go more than infinity, guys. All what can happen is you will go less than infinity. So what happens is, as the price or quantity supplied increases, PES value will come down, but it will still be more than 1. PES will decrease, but remain greater than unity. Unity means 1, right? This thing greater than unity. In other words, it will be greater than 1. Is that part fine? Elastic. How will the PES behave along the supply curve? Okay. So these are small, tricky areas, guys, that they test MCQs on. Okay, because I'm not going to basic and teach you what is elastic, inelastic, that you don't have to know. Okay. So, okay, then how does it work for an inelastic curve, guys? Now use your common sense. At this point, it is 0. Can it go less than 0? Now, remember, PS is always positive. Can it go less than 0? Can't, no. So it has to be along the supply curve, it will increase. But since it is inelastic, less than 1. So maybe, for example, at this point, it is 0.2. At this point, let's say 0.5. At this point, let's say 0.75. So what is happening? It is not going more than 1 because it is inelastic. But what is happening? When the price or the quantity supplied increases, what happens? The value of PES increases, but is less than unity. Unity means 1, now less than unity. So have that in mind. And then for a unitary elastic, guys, at every single point it will be 1. So if you calculate at this point also, yeah, this point also it is 1, this point also it is 1, this point also it is 1. That's for unitary elastic. So what are the 3 things that we learned? One is, by looking at the supply curve, by looking at the diagram, you should be able to figure out what is the type of elasticity. Second thing, by looking at the equation, you should be able to figure out what is the type of elasticity. Third thing, what is happening to the elasticity value when you're going upwards along the curve. So for the elastic supply curve, at this point it is infinity. So when you're going upwards, the value will decrease, but it will still be more than 1, because elastic means more than 1, guys. So it will be more than 1, but it will decrease. In my theory class, I think we did calculations and I explained how does that happen. Okay. So yes, you can take screenshots, guys, no problem at all. Okay. So in elastic, how does it work? By looking at the equation, can we say slope is 5? Yes, you can say slope is 5, correct. That's okay. You can say slope is 5. But remember, slope and elastic is not the same, right? Okay. So in elastic, how does it work? At this point, it is 0. Along the supply curve, it will increase. So the points to remember is in elastic, when the price increases, PES will decrease. In inelastic, when the price increases, PES will increase. These are small, tricky points that they test in MCQ. Okay. Any questions on that area? Fine. slope into not QS over P, P over QS. No, there is nothing like this for PED, guys. Only for PES. For PED, there's a different story, but there is no separate equation and all like that. So for PED, how it works is like this, guys. So you all know, I'm not going into that part today, right? So in PED, how it works is at each point, the elasticity is different. At this point, PED is infinity. At this point, PED is 0. Right in the middle here, PED is 1, unitary. This point, it is elastic. So here, PED is greater than 1. At this point, it is inelastic. This is PED less than 1. Right in the middle here, it is unitary, right? Unitary elastic. Right up over here, it is perfectly elastic, right? Right in the bottom over here, it is perfectly inelastic. So I'm not going into that part today. I'm hoping you all would have learned this in your theory classes. Okay, done. So you all can get a screenshot. Maybe someone can send a screenshot to me as well. Once the class is over, I'll send it on the group. I'll just put it over here. Okay, so this you can take a screenshot. Okay. Right. So now we'll move on to the question. Now you all should be okay and able to figure out how you do this question.